Welcome to Sports in the 607, where we talk games people play. Here's your host, Bob Michaels.
In my travels in the 607 calling area, sometimes I wander out into adjoining areas. 570 comes to mind very immediately. And I'm very privileged to welcome a longtime friend. Many of you know him as Mr. Mansfield. To me, he's that, as well as Steve McCloskey. It's good to see you. And thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
Thanks for asking, man. It's nice to be asked.
Well, this is just kind of free form type thing, and for anyone who tunes in and watches, it's just a couple of guys who have known one another for quite some time, getting together and talking about old times. We've had quite a few adventures, most of them centered around sports-related things, especially at Mansfield University. And I think back when we actually first became acquainted, I was working in radio, traditional radio at the time, and you were installed as the first ever full-time sports information guy at Mansfield, but you had held that position in addition to many other titles, including student newspaper at Mansfield, sports information in a part-time basis, and all of that. And when you think back of the early formative years, getting ready for it, we all had many duties that we subscribed to get us to where we are now in 2025. But when you think back, when do you think you saw the fire, had the spark that was ignited that got you involved in sports information?
Well, I think the spark that got me involved in sports information started long before I actually got into sports information. So, my father, Whitey McCloskey, is a legendary basketball coach in my hometown of Danville, Pennsylvania. And not only was he an incredible teacher and basketball coach, but he was also a promoter. He did so many unique things back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And, um, he would invent things like dizzy dribbling contest, and we would come out to theme music, Happy Days Are Here Again. And he nicknamed the gymnasium we played in as the Old Tin Tabernacle. He wrote he wrote all the stories. He did all the things. He never acknowledged that he was doing all those aspects of that. And I think I just caught that bug for him. I was one of five sons that he had. We traveled with them everywhere. We were on the bus for all their games. And I just saw what he did behind the scenes. And I was probably the least athletic of the five brothers. All of them want to be starters. I started like 3 games in my high school career.
Yeah.
So I was just drawn to that. I didn't know that at the time, but when the opportunity came 20 some years later, it was just intrinsic.
You know, the thing that I remember most, and it was the family aspect, and you talked about your dad and when I first met you, and your mom played an integral role in terms of your development and things of that. Would you weigh in on that for a moment?
Yeah. I wouldn't be at Mansfield if it wasn't for my mother. I started in Mansfield in 1971 and I graduated 20 years later. But those 12 years as a junior have some really great memories in them. Anyway, I was down in Florida, so I left school the first time and went and opened a bar outside the University of Florida with one of my brothers, and found out very quickly that being on the inside the bar part as sitting on the outside of the bar part were a whole different ball game and not nearly as fun. So I
Yeah.
returned back to school, and then I was smitten by a young lady in Florida, and I wanted to go back. So I would drive back and forth from Mansfield almost every other weekend. And I just wanted to be back in Florida. So I went back and, of course, left school and worked in a number of different positions. I was captain of the Park Rangers in Sarasota County, Florida, and then I got out of that to go into McDonald's Corporation in management, and then from that to Wendy's Corporation. And when I was working there, I thought I had sort of the perfect lifestyle. I was living on the beach. I had a little bungalow there that was part of an estate. I sailed. I did all those things and thought I had the cat's life. My mother, who'd only came to visit her children that had children, had never came down to see me. So I was kidding her about that. And of course, she decided to come down. And I was living in Venice, Florida. And at that time, my mother came down, and it was during spring break. And so everything was really busy. And I was wearing a pager, and the pager went off constantly. So when it came time to take my mother back to Florida, or to put her back on the plane, this is back in the day when you could actually walk them to the gate to do that.
Right.
She looked at me and she said, Steve, you're not happy here. Why don't you try to go back to school, see if you can go back to Mansfield and finish your degree? And as my beeper was going off, I gave her a kiss and say, Mom, you know what? That sounds like an idea to explore. I'll look into it. And then 2 weeks later, I got a phone call that my mother was killed in an automobile accident. So I came back to Danville to live with my dad. And when I was back in there, I decided to take a course at Bloomsburg just to get back into taking the courses, and I did that. And I went up to Mansfield to see if they would allow me to come back into school. I was not a very good, mature student my first 2 trips through, and I walked in. This is the beauty of Mansfield. I walked into the president's office, Rod Kelchner, and the secretary said, well, Rod's in a cabinet meeting right now, but if you leave your name, we'll contact you. You can come back and stuff. So I did, came back in an hour and a half. He was the warmest, most welcoming person you could ever marry. He just turned 91. And he looks at this, and I told him my story, and I said I wanted to come back. And he knew who my father was. Rod graduated from Bloomsburg University. My father graduated from Bloom, not at the same time, but they're, of course, well aware of each other. And he looks at this, and he's looking at my transcripts, and he goes, Steve, I reviewed this with the provost, and our only question is, how the heck did we not fail you out of school completely?
Yeah, really.
And he just said, here's the deal, Steve. We'll find a way to get you back in. But that way means that you're going to have to take over 5 classes again that you either failed or got a D in. And if you do that, that'll boost your GPA significantly, and you can be enrolled again as a full-time student. So I
The
drove
journey
the
of
2.5.
Steve McCloskey.
Yeah.
Steve, didn't mean to interrupt.
So I drove 2.5 hours every day to go to Mansfield and back to be with my dad. And I got a 4.0. And I got involved again in things. And you know what? I started thinking, I kind of like this environment.
We're going to take a break right here.
Okay.
And we'll be back with more of sports in the 607 and the 570 as well. Sports in the 607 is presented in part by Empire Sports of the Southern Tier. Steve McCloskey's been known for being a storyteller, but there's a lot of fact behind the man, the myth, the legend, as he uses occasionally to throw my way. But Steve, you were talking about returning to academia. Sometimes it's difficult to try to, I guess, follow up or maybe recreate the ground that you've covered. But I think I've known you have the tenacity, the determination, and when you set your mind to take on a task, you're very determined to achieve it and then some. So you talk about returning to Mansfield, the challenge given to you about repeating classes and things of that nature. And did you have a feeling at that point? And I have to point out, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you were 34 years old in pursuit of degrees at Mansfield University. Was that a shining moment in your memory?
It is, Bob, because it just changed what my life projection was, and because of that moment, Bob, all the best things that I have in my life today occurred. So it just created an opportunity. And Mansfield's always about opportunity. That really should be our moniker. Mansfield means opportunity. So when I came back, I started working for the Flashlight, and the Flashlight is a student paper. And I became the sports editor of that, and that was so much fun. I got to talk to people. I went to meet our really young baseball coach by the name of Harry Hilson. That was my first assignment, to do a fall baseball preview. And Harry, of course, was just great. He couldn't have been more welcoming. He was just so happy that somebody had an interest in his baseball program. And so I did that. I started doing those same things I learned from my dad. I started creating an environment, doing nicknames, doing events, doing promotions, creating an energy about it besides something more than just the activity that was going on the playing fields or the courts. And it was a lot of fun. And you could also see a lot of success, and people seemed to appreciate it. And I know you would know this
Steve,
too.
in 1995, I'm working radio, and I'm starting to get press releases from Mansfield University, in particular from Steve McCloskey. And actually, I think it was pre-95. And through that, we developed a very early relationship, and an enjoyable one. And I'm sure you probably didn't even have an inkling, nor did I, that it would be long lasting. And through that association, had an opportunity to arrive on campus and start calling games. And some 30 years later, I'm still doing play-by-play of men's baseball, as
Yeah.
well as 13 years down the road for Mansfield University softball. And I have you to thank for it. You had a belief in me, and even through successive sports information guys at Mansfield University, I had the opportunity to be close to the action. And I have to share a page out of my story. Initially, I was thinking of going into education, maybe teaching, having a classroom of teaching history, and maybe a side job of coaching. And someone obviously wiser than me said, listen, by the time you get out of college, there'll be this many people looking for that many job. Notice I say job. So the major was changed. It was journalism as a major, and broadcast as a minor. And I've worked every single day, and I've enjoyed it. It's never been going to work, if you know what I mean. And probably
Yeah.
pretty much the same for you.
Yeah. But you capsulized that well. It's hard to explain to people how rewarding it is to do the jobs that we had. They are incredibly stressful, time consuming. You have to be right all the time. Um, Relatively low paid in a world of high paid jobs. But there's just something about it, Bob. The atmosphere that it creates, the interactions you have with people's lives, going through the thrill of victory and the agony and defeat. Thanks for that line to Kurt Gowdy or whoever made that up for their Wide World of Sports. But yeah, it creates something in you that just keeps on motivating you. For you to do what you have done at the level that you've done it for such a long time is really amazing. So many people get into the business and they get bit by that bug, but it becomes a little bit overwhelming. I mean, there's a high burnout ratio in our professions. So to stay the course, it's easy to start. It's incredibly hard to maintain because it's a little bit more work, and doing that same thing over and over again is a bit of a challenge.
We will take another break right here, but have a few stories I'd like to have you touch upon as we continue our journey here on Sports in the 607. Sports in the 607 is brought to you by Solutions Federal Credit Union. Well, the journey of Steve McCloskey is what we're delving into today. And as I mentioned before the break, Steve and I have had many adventure. I want to talk about an event that took place for 13 years on the campus of Mansfield University, and that was the Legion Ball Wooden Bat tournament that bore the name of Joel Stevens. How did that come about, Steve, in your recollection?
I got involved in it because Harry got me involved in it, and Harry got involved in it because I think Bill Steele, the Corning coach, was Legion coach, was so touched by, Joel's story is so hard even now, of course, to talk about because it was someone who was in the pinnacle of life and everything was supposed to be, and it's just a good human being. The way he faced his adversity and his family faced that adversity. So we all got involved in it, Bob, because it was the right thing to do. And we were all feeling that we need to do something to honor this person because it was just so tragic. So, yeah, so all of us, we got together a group of people who were the core. When you say 607, they were the core of the 607 area, Terry Day would be involved in it. I mean, they promoted it. They did all these aspects of that. Everybody wanted to be part of it to give back something to his memory. And the Stevens family was so appreciative. And that tournament was a remarkably successful tournament for a long, long period of time, bringing all those kids to Mansfield and during the 4th of July weekend. And just an incredible amount of work involved into it. By the time that tournament was done, we were pretty much done ourselves. You needed a week vacation because it required so much to do, but it was just a wonderful, good memory to do that aspect of that. And of course, Bob, that tribute that you made to Joel, one of the most remarkable events that I've been when it first played. All those players listening to his voice really set the spirit for those kids of how genuine this guy was. And that's why we're here honoring him. So, yeah, it was really cool.
Well, I have goosebumps as we're talking and remembering all that. And during the times that the teams would arrive from multiple states, including Canada as well, one of the highlights for me was the fact that Steve and I had similar musical tastes, and the Stevens tournament would not be the Stevens tournament without hearing multiple tunes from the Beach Boys over that sound system at Shayute Field. So those were some fun times. And I want to talk a little bit about travel with Steve McCloskey, and we will do that when we come back. Sports in the 607, brought to you by On a Roll, Hanover Square Horseheads. I'm sure you recognize Steve McCloskey. I'm Bob Michaels. This is Sports in the 607. Steve, the longtime sports information director at Mansfield University, and during the early part, or maybe midway through my tenure as calling games, Steve and I had the good fortune of traveling with the team in postseason. And there's one particular time when Steve and I had gone to, I believe it was Boyertown, Pennsylvania. It was a hot, sultry day. We were on probably not the best playoff scenario as far as fields are concerned. And Steve and I were on field B as opposed to being on field A. And they put some large, oversized beach umbrellas up, to protect us all from the sun. Unfortunately, where they had us positioned, there was a little bit of a gap, or a large gap there, where the sun would come down, and I can't move. I'm stationary right there. Steve had the good fortune of finding an umbrella later on in the ball game. But I had the most, shall we say, translucent glow coming from my body because of sunburn and everything like that. The point I wanted to make was it was after the game had ended. Steve and I are driving all around the surrounding communities in Boyertown, just trying to find a pharmacy that was open so I could get some sunscreen. You remember that, Steve?
Oh my gosh, Bob, I remember it really well. Uh, yeah. Well, and we lost the game too. That was the thing that I first remember. But yeah, I remember that well. I think that one may have been in State College. They had that little field complex in State College outside of Boalsburg that the Penn State uh, club team had played on, and they had created this whole atmosphere. But I really remember that well because you turned the color that I didn't even know existed. It was so bright and so red, and we had to turn the air conditioning on in the car just because of the glow of the heat coming off of your body. Uh, yeah, yeah, fun times though. That was really a good time.
And another story that I'll throw in here just very briefly, we had gone to get some food at some place, and like a lot of these roadhouse restaurants, they bring out a fairly good size um, bucket of peanuts. And Steve and I are sitting there waiting for the waitress to come over, and we're shucking the peanuts and everything. And she walks over after an extended time of us sitting down, and she looks at us, and she had this expression on her face like, "What in Sam Hill do you think you're doing?" And we questioned. Well, we had shucked the peanuts and thrown the shells on the floor, and I kind of felt like I was back in school. We don't do that sort of thing here. There were no signs.
That was like a part of the whole ritual.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Steve, just changing gears here for a moment. Mansfield lost football, Division II football, for a year or two, but it was brought back in the guise of sprint football, which continues to this day. And you once again were very kind to reach out to me and say, "Hey, listen, we'd like you to maybe do some play-by-play for us." And I had that opportunity to do it in a few different instances. And uh, I guess the public outcry, especially from the alums, when they decided to drop football, was heard worldwide because I ran into some former players from Mansfield who were coaching local high school football. And one in particular, Rick Kimball came to mind. He says, "You know what? We're going to try to do our darndest to see if we can get football back at Mansfield, but a lot of it has to do with the efforts of Steve McCloskey."
Well, I I think I became more of the person they could trust on campus. So that was such a shocking thing, that happened in 2006 that the Division II program was dropped. And in 2003 we were nationally ranked. And it still hard to know that it happened. But I got together with a bunch of alums and said, "Here's the deal. We had to deal. You had to have a plan." So they put the plan together, and their plan was to bring back Division II football, and it was to do it in a 3-year span, and they were going to raise money to fund it, and this whole aspect of that. And we were at a meeting with all these alums in Harrisburg, football alums, with the president, and the president was Dr. Marvine Luschke. She's the one who had made the decision. So she had said that she would bring back football, but it couldn't be at the expense level that Division II was, the salaries, the travel, everything that was involved in that aspect of it. It had to be dummied down, so to speak, as a cost aspect of that. So they presented their plan, and I had a feeling that she was going to reject it only because their plan didn't have a sustainable income coming to it. And I was in contact with Steve Murray, who is the outgoing. This is his last year as a commissioner of the PSAC. He's retiring. And we were going to a funeral thing for a good friend. I said, Steve, we got to figure out, you got to help me figure out a way to be able to do this. What can we do that doesn't require all this expense? And about a half an hour into it, he goes, hey, have you ever heard of sprint football? I said, the 150 league. He goes, well, it's not the 150 league now. They're up to 167 pounds and stuff. But so he started describing it. He said, how about this? He said, you know who plays in the sprint football league? I said, I think some of the obvious. He goes, yeah. He goes, Princeton, Penn, Cornell, Army, and Navy. Then he started giggling and says, doesn't Mansfield sound like that belongs in that, along with those group of people? And son of a gun, opportunity, Bob, opportunity. So sprint football was retracting. They had just lost Rutgers, and those people were concerned that that sport may go away. So we reached out to Terry Collin, legendary coach, sprint football coach, along with his father before that at Cornell, and they helped us be accepted by those schools because we needed a football team and they needed another team to play.
We have to take another break right here, Steve. We'll be back to wrap things up right after this. Sports in the 607, presented by First Heritage Federal Credit Union. Well, it's been an enjoyable time chatting with Steve McCloskey as we rekindled some thoughts of journeys really enjoyed with that fellow on the screen. And Steve, before we leave, I want to talk about how you've been honored as enshrined into the College Sports Communications Hall of Fame. There's been a Lifetime Achievement Award in your name, and that achievement is handed out on an annual basis for those who commit to telling the story of sports at the collegiate level, and certainly in your name and honor. You're well thought of in terms of the people who have crossed paths with you, and I have to echo those thoughts of a thousandfold from my perspective. When you look back, can you summarize, what it's been like for you, given a third and fourth opportunity to get back to academia and to continue on that road and to achieve what you've been able to do?
Well, Bob, the first thing, everything that I've achieved, I've gotten all the accolades for everything else, but my student assistants and my assistants later in my career were the people who deserve all those honors. So of all those things that they put my name to, they just put all their faces on. And the greatest accomplishment that I have, besides having a wonderful family and my children, is those kids who were student assistants. And I used to have like a dozen of them toward the end of it per thing, who have gone on. 26 of them went on to the profession, including the head person at Penn State. She is one of mine. The head person at Old Dominion, he is one of mine. They have worked for the NFL, NBA, NBL. They all had the opportunity to do those things because they had an opportunity at Mansfield to get involved in something, and they got the bug. So if there's anything about a legacy, the legacy is those people who've gone on to greatness because they had an opportunity to step in.
Steve McCloskey, very humble person, certainly well deserving of wearing the title Mr. Mansfield. More importantly to me, thank you, Steve, for being my friend, and thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure and an honor to be associated with you.
Thanks for joining us for Sports in the 607. We'll have another segment coming soon.